Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. Peter, how's it going?
It's going well. Yeah, we're back. We're excited. We have DNF'd a race, so lots of stories to tell. And we're also into the week ahead of Unbound, so lots of stuff going on. A couple listener questions and feedback. And yes, we're doing good. So the question, perhaps on everyone's mind or not, is how are you feeling post DNF of the Sulphur Springs 100 miler?
First of all, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, if this is what's on your mind when this podcast is coming out, if this is still on your mind, if this was ever on your mind, this shouldn't be on your mind. This is really not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. Well, I do not expect it to be on anyone's mind.
But we do appreciate it.
Like that said, anyone who messaged this weekend, we so appreciate you. And yeah, thanks for following along on our journey at Sulphur Springs. So if you didn't know, if you haven't been listening, I was racing the Sulphur Springs 100 miler this weekend for the second time. Last year, I won it, but I missed the course record by 3.5 minutes. So this year, the goal was to go back and get that course record, which we knew was going to be questionable, weather dependent, course dependent, like other racers dependent. But we thought there was a very good chance of it. And then the weather turned. So all week, everyone had been looking at the weather obsessively, talking about the weather obsessively. I was trying to tune out as much of that noise as I could because the weather is going to be what the weather is going to be. You know, we were prepared for rain. We were prepared for it to be like a little cool. I don't think anyone was prepared for the amount of rain that fell and the way the temperatures dropped in that race. So long story short, and we'll get into it, but I ended up dropping out at 100 kilometers in, so finished lap 5 of 8, and honestly, like, I would say I was borderline hypothermic. I knew going into the next lap would be, like, not to be dramatic, but it would have been a dangerous proposition. Like, it very well could have ended with me either at an aid station, just, like, in absolute dire straits, like, shaking, shivering, which I was at the, like, finish line aid station, or just kind of on course, just in the fetal position, very, very cold. And it just did not make sense for me to keep going. I was not the first person to drop out of the 100 mile. In fact, I think all of the men that were in front of me,
maybe one stuck it out. I'm not sure, but yeah, definitely like the couple leaders dropped out, and then they were sort of like, when you were debating dropping out, yeah, they were sort of like, but oh no, but you're in second overall now. So yeah, it's sort of like a weird thing, but that's sometimes what happens with weather, right? Is it sort of just knocks out a lot of, especially the people who are pushing for these course limits. The thing is, like, a lot of them are underdressed essentially because they're moving so fast until they're not. So yeah, I think the people that ended up finishing and winning any of the races really, except for maybe the shorter ones, there's a 20K and a 50K, like those people were in their running shorts and just sort of pushed through and were cold at the end, but got through it because it was shorter. But in the 100 miler, it was definitely people that were set up with big rubberized coats and really sort of just like trudging through a lot of it, which good on them for pushing through.
Absolutely. Yeah. That just wasn't really the race that I wanted, or, you know, we always say complete before you compete. The thing was, like, I've completed this race. I really didn't feel like completing it and checking that box was a huge priority. And you and I, the next morning, we were sort of talking about, I had, you know, A goal, B goal. A goal was the record, B goal was the win. But there was no C goal of finishing.
Well, and as I sort of like planned for the weekend and sort of like was watching the weather a little bit, so I was ready both to support and to sort of like make sure that you did have appropriate gear. And we did have many Gore-Tex raincoats and winter things and waterproof whatever. That was sort of, I was like, what is the like, are you going to push through if it's going to take us like 20 hours? Because you were, what was it, 17 18 or something. Yeah. That would have been the record. And then, like, again, you said, okay, well, I'll win even if it's like a little slower. And I think in your head, you were probably thinking like maybe 18 or 19. But then, maybe we could have defined it a bit more, but you weren't sort of like, I need to finish my first 100-miler or something like that. And like the win time was 27 hours. And I don't know what we would have done. Like, it's probably not worth saying that we would go faster, because it could have indeed been a crawl and whatever. But yeah, that wasn't sort of like the thing you were doing. You wanted to run 100-miler, I guess is another way to put it. And when it started becoming post-holing, in that like your feet were going deep into mud, and it's very like you were barely able to walk, you had to almost crawl up and down some of the climbs and descents. That's sort of like getting farther and farther from like you wanted to run a marathon.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Sorry, 100-mile.
Yeah, it kind of made me, after the fact, like really think about who I am as a racer. And I think it's funny because so many people have messaged, or even, when we were doing a couple mental toughness podcasts back in December, people were like, oh, no, you're super mentally tough. Like, you do these 100-milers. And I'm like, I cannot stress to you enough that, like, we talk about this idea of like, it's not grit, it's fit. Mm-hmm. I am 100% fit, not grit. Right. Like, and I'm okay with that. That's who I am as a racer. And like, sure, obviously it takes some grittiness to get through 100K, but blah, 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 blah. But
well, and this was in some ways like Leadville, where you had basically broken your ankle. And I said, well, I guess you're walking up a mountain. And then you said, okay, I guess I'll walk up the mountain. And you cried for, what was it, 4 hours until you got to the end. And then the medic said, you can't go back over that mountain. You got to stop. And so that's sometimes the thing is like when you do have medical people saying like this is, you're going to be exposed and like you're bawling your eyes out. That is, you need to be careful. I was going somewhere with that and I've lost myself.
My grit versus fit and me saying I am not.
Yeah. So in this one, like you were already, because no one wanted to put coats on, I said, you all should put some coats on because it's very wet and getting colder.
Shout out to all my friends that were like, oh, racing in tights would be a silly thing to do.
And I was thinking like, you're fine for 60K, 70K, 80K, or like 6 hours, 7 hours. But like at some point you're all very wet and like your body's going to start cooling and cooling and cooling. So when you came in, you couldn't like use your hands and like you were shivering and you're like, I don't know.
I'm so sad we don't have video of, so after lap 4, we did try to change my shirt. We tried to put on coats. We tried to like.
So we doubled up the coat and I said, your best chance is like if you just go out now and we try and like almost sauna suit a little bit and then just take the other coat off if you start getting to that point. And you loosened up a bit, but like it just kept raining and kept being slippery. So you came in the next time and like you could tell like you were just very, very cold and not moving, right? Like there's actually a video, one of the people I coach sometimes, Mark, he was a local, so he came by and he actually got a video of you going out for a lap.
Heading out on lap 5. But I'd stopped for like 10 minutes so we could change all my stuff. And in that time, my legs were so cold and so locked up.
Whereas the year before, you were, you have your ultra shuffle, or whatever we call that. But you like moved well almost through that whole day. Like you could tell you were starting to get a little sore on the descents, but like you were running pretty well throughout that 100-miler last year. But this one, like when he came over and showed me the video of you leaving, I was like, yeah, this probably isn't going past this next one. Just because again, you're starting to like stiffen up and you're just shivering and your body's going to shut down, right? This is, I don't know that hypothermia is what we would call it, but this is where like at some point your body just can't perform anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
And I guess the like thing is like everyone's sort of like, oh, is Molly okay? And like maybe she's really sad. And like, yeah, I think on some level, like you would have loved to be like the person on the podium again and like got the goal. But the thing is like, it's an ambitious goal. Like Amanda Nelson, who set that goal or that record, is a great runner, like very talented. She's doing great things still. Like, so it was very, very hard to do. And it did rely a bit on conditions to be good, right? And you were still on record pace even when you dropped out, which is like the sad thing, but we could see that like
there was no chance.
You had blown, like you were well under the course record, which is, we're celebrating that. Like this was your fastest 100K, which is a positive. You had many great laps. You were higher in the overall standings, like throughout the whole race and on the first lap, which is, there's like very talented marathoner men that did this and they were flying on the first lap. So lots of positives.
The course was just getting progressively worse and worse. So Sulphur Springs, if you haven't listened to this, it's in the 100-mile, you do 8 laps of the same 20K course. And every lap, the conditions were just getting worse and worse as water was just piling up on the course. So first lap, it was fine because it just started raining. Second lap, it was getting greasy, but it wasn't like terrible. Third lap, okay, we're getting muddy. We're sliding down some stuff. Like there's some standing water. Fourth lap, fifth lap, like knee deep water, knee deep mud. You're like, you could not get down something without sliding. Like,
right. So so there's like getting this exposure, and then you were also, everyone was sort of like, as they, what I'm calling post holing, where your foot goes deep into the mud, and then you have to almost like pull it out, like walking through deep snow.
It was like running in sand, honestly. It was like how I would.
But then you were all getting rocks into your shoes and mud into your shoes, so everyone was, their foot was getting pushed forward, so you had blown through a sock we didn't know about, and your toes were getting really close to the end of your shoe because there was mud, I guess, behind the ankle, but then also rocks were getting in every one of those steps, so you had to stop and take off a shoe, which is like really hard and tough when you can't use your fingers.
Yeah, when your fingers are not really working and you have to take your gloves off, it's not great. Yeah, the thing is though, what I'm like, so I guess like the question was like, why aren't you sad? Is how you phrased it. And I think it's because I got a lot of like well-meaning messages that were like, it's okay to be sad. And like, it's okay to like feel bad about this. And I'm like, wait, am I supposed to feel bad about this? Like,
right.
Kind of like you said, like my first couple laps were fantastic. I had a great 50 mile. I had a good 100K.
Well, I mean, and your best 100K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My legs, my lungs, my gut, they were all good. Like the stuff that I could control was good. Like the conditions I'd set myself up for were good. Like, but the race conditions were just not. Yeah. It just wasn't there.
And this could have been the same. It could have been a hot day where, again, everyone's just going way slower and you have to carry way more water, and then you run into like gut and sweating and cramping or whatever other stuff that can happen. So it's just the nature of these large things. And I said, like, I think that's probably true of a lot of 100-mile races, where it's like people win and then the next one they're not even in the top 10 because something goes wrong, or you know, an ankle breaks, a gut goes, a navigation issue, a weather issue, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, still love the race. Still think it's a super good one to put on your schedule. Fingers crossed that we don't have a year like this anytime soon.
Okay. Well, people will want to know. I don't know. I don't think you've actually decided, but are you going to sign up for anything else ever again, or what?
Ever again. Cyclocross this fall. Okay. I'm saying it. I'm calling it here. I've called it in Bicycling Magazine, putting it all over the place. Okay. Before we move on, there are sort of 2 points I wanted to make. And one is, I cannot stress this will make me tear up here, what a good partner you are in general, but like in this race specifically, in like race crewing, you are like the best crew person. And I think this weekend was like probably such a good example of it. Like, I think it takes a really, really good partner to know how much to push someone to go back out on the course and when to be like, okay, we're done. And I think you like really did a good job at hitting the right balance of like, should you go back out? Do you want to go back out? Like, maybe you should think about going back out, like get out for one more lap, that kind of thing, versus, okay, clearly we need to pull the plug here. And like, this is what makes sense in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's very challenging. As I said to you, like, you were like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "Well, I cry every time you come through." Like, literally, every time. Like, I can barely talk a lot of times, but then it's like once we get you in, then we can sort of talk about it. But you like have some, like, you were like crying, which like usually you're like pretty dead set you're gonna go or not. So. And also you were just like, so you had dropped so much time. Like I ended up walking down to meet you on the hill, which I would usually not do. Like I was in rubber boots and like walked like 500 meters down a hill, but I was like, oh, like you're really not moving. So I figured we could talk about it on the way up the hill. Yeah. So I don't know, I guess, thank you, but it's all good.
We do have an article actually on that note, how to support your partner with their goal race. We'll include a link to that in the show notes. We put it up it's our repost, but we put it up last week because I think it is like, it's a very helpful thing to think about, because it's when you are kind of out for a day like this with your partner, things can go fantastically. It can be a great moment. It can also be a really hard day. And a lot of it is like figuring out how to take care of your person, figuring out if you're the racer, what you need to have taken care of. And then for the race or for the person who is like crewing or helping or whatever, like taking care of your racer, but also yourself. Like, I think actually we got a couple comments on Instagram, and one of them was saying like, this applied more for her with her kids. And she's like, this was actually a good reminder that I need to remember to, eat and drink and take care of myself during the day, because I'm not that good. Like, I'm not good at taking care of the racers if I'm dehydrated and hangry. And
yeah, you can't. Yeah. So it's like sort of like a checklist. And we went through this with Michael Houghton, or Hottie, of Leadville fame, talking towards Leadville, but a lot of the stuff was just, how do you be a good racer? How do you be a good supporter in these big events? And yeah, it's like a lot of checklists. Like we had checklists for your sort of like what I had to have ready. But then also, yeah, like almost for me, like you need to go to the washroom. You need to do you need to sit down and like rest for a bit? Do you need to eat? Like, because it's not a regular schedule. Like you sort of have, you're like, I was beholden to this like 2-hour like cycle that we were on of like, you were sort of coming in every 2 hours.
Well, and you weren't even sure, like it was hard to tell when someone was coming in, and you just didn't know, because obviously it's not like you're coming in at 2 hours on the dot. It's not a 2-hour course. And I think actually the first lap you were actually like, I almost surprised you there, because I had to come in and find you.
Yeah, you were like, because I said I was like, could you just go a little slower on the first lap, given that you didn't need to go as fast, and then you came in 10 minutes faster than you did last year, despite the conditions. So that's what I mean. I think there's a lot of positives, because I asked you and you said, oh, I felt like that was like easier. I felt it was so that you could be fitter, and it's hard to say. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And then I think my final point here is there are some races that, yes, you do need to or should like grit through to the finish. Like sometimes you do need to finish, right? There are people out there for them, finishing was the win, right? They've never done 100K or 100-mile or a 50-mile, whatever the distance was. And like gritting it out to the finish was like, they had a really strong, like, this is my why. This is like what I have to do to feel like.
And that was their goal, right? And I think probably a lot of the people, I think it is like, it's sort of a whiny thing in some ways, but it's like you were ready for a 16 to 17:30 type day, maybe willing to go to like 18:30 if it was a good race, or just like, oh, your gut was a little off, I guess this is going to be a little slower. You weren't ready for a 27-hour day. I certainly wasn't ready to stand around in rain for that long. So there's a bit of that calculus that you have to go into. Like, but if someone signed up for a 24-hour 100-mile, this is my first 100-miler, your first 100-miler took 24 hours. So then, 27 hours is within that. And yeah, it was going to be hard. I was going to have to walk a bunch of it anyhow. So then it's not a ton different. And hopefully they had brought clothes that reflected that type of movement and everything as well. And you see people, they were out there in full out like rubber, like almost like a firefighter's rubber coat.
Yeah, some of the night photos, what people changed into to get through the night of that was, I mean, good on them. I'm so impressed and so amazed by them. And it's not the kind of racer I am.
Yeah, and I mean, I look back and like, there's probably things that I'm always like, well, what if this was World Championships and like we needed to do better? So there's like things that we're going to take away, which I think is always when you don't win. Like the good thing is that like now we have things is like, okay, like what would you do if like this was something that you needed to or wanted to finish? Like how would you keep moving when it's almost at freezing and also pouring rain for 8 hours, 10 hours, 17 hours? How do you keep a human moving? Like at some point, this is a very hard engineering challenge, but there is solutions, right? I'm sure, we're like kayak gloves, and like maybe you do just put a garbage bag over yourself. Like, because I was saying, what is that race? I keep forgetting, the Barkley Marathon, right? Like I think they essentially start putting garbage bags on, and that's the cheapest thing to just keep over, and you can carry it really easy, right? So lots of neat solutions, but maybe not the one we were in for on that particular.
Yeah. And I think it's funny, I'm working on an article now that's more like the emotional support side. And one thing I actually was just writing about before we started recording is like not what ifing a race to death. I think, but I said like there's a difference between like what can we learn from this race that we would take into, yes, if it was the World Championships of the world and I'm in first, and like how do we keep me going? I think this is all great information to have and things to think about. you can't think about the what if or if only or like,
and certainly not
should
like,
have
well,
done.
what if you were tougher? Like, I think that's the one that people is like, oh, I could have pushed. It's like, yeah, now after you've slept for a week and like have refueled yourself and you're warm in your home, I'm sure you think you could have pushed. But in that moment, like, no, you like could barely stand up and were shivering and crying. Like, you were done.
Yeah, exactly. I said
You had been done for an hour probably.
well, that's why I told you when we were in the car and you were kind of like looking at what was going on in the race and stuff. And even like for the day after, I was like, please don't tell me results. Like, don't tell me anything that's going on, because I know my brain would go to, should I have been tougher? Should I have done this? And yeah, like, because it's easy to say once I'm warm in the van with the dog on me.
And you said, one of the positives of you dropping out, I guess there was two, was that a lot of other people messaged you and said, oh, I'm so glad that you dropped out because now I don't feel like I'm not tough or something.
You're super tough. If you made it through any of that course, you were super tough.
And then the other one was that like a group of 3 women got to win a 100-miler and be on the podium and a 100-miler that wouldn't have been probably on it. Right? So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is hopefully good for running going forward.
And yeah, they were the people to be out there for 26 and a half. Yeah, you deserve to get the first place. Like, absolutely. To grit that out on that day.
Because it's still, there needs to be more women or idea, would be good if there was more women at any of these starts. But that 100-miler is always the one that like we say, like, sometimes women don't start things if they're not like absolutely sure that it's going to go well. And I think it's okay if it is a little uncertain too, right? But
100%. Yeah. And at the end of the day, this is all for fun. Like, even no matter how professional we are, like, ultimately this is for fun.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a challenge, right? I think that it should be uncertain. That is what you signed up for. So anything else then?
No, I think before we get into talking about Unbound, which I think makes sense to kind of combine in this episode because we are talking about ultra endurance here. Unbound is coming up.
A race that could end up with a lot of walking in deep mud, potentially, or be just really hot, or maybe a bit of both. So we'll talk about that in a second. But we do have Payable has come back on for our full summer series of podcasts. So we're very thankful for our friends at Payable and their support of all the things we do, including this podcast.
Yeah. So if you've ever tried to figure out how to accept payments and you've had to kind of deal with like, oh, should I go with Gumroad or Wix or Shopify or WooCommerce or all of these platforms? The good news is you don't need a website. You just need a Google form and the Payable add-on, and you can suddenly take payments for pretty much whatever within that Google form.
That's right. So I just did a post last week about how we've been using the Payable form as sort of like a routing. They call it a routing form, where someone's like, oh, I want to work with you, but I'm not sure what type of coaching I want. And so what it does is sort of take them through, and it's like, well, do you want to talk to someone on the phone, or do you want to meet to work on your bike skills, or do you want like ongoing like coaching, or do you just want like a training plan to sort of take away and go and do your own thing? And then it sort of lets you sign up for those things in the form. So it sort of acts as that like helping someone find the correct service for their goals and what they're looking for, and then also lets them fill in their information. And of course, the key thing with Payable is it lets you collect payment at the same time as that information.
Yeah, so you can find more at payableapps.com/athlete. You can find our favorite templates, and cool thing, you can be set up and running in under 5 minutes. It is so easy to use. Okay, again, we'll include that link in the show notes, but payableapps.com/athlete. Okay.
So Unbound 2026, it's coming up. You're going to do a podcast we were going to mention with the Queen stage, right? And this is, so that's like a recap one you're going to do. Will they drop it the next day, the Sunday, or are they hoping to do it Saturday afternoon?
Goal is Saturday afternoon. So Saturday late afternoon, Queen stage women's cycling podcast. If you're not already following and listening to it, definitely hit that subscribe button.
I won't quit. I feel like it's a long race to drop it, but we'll see how you all do with that. The Queen Stage podcast you should subscribe to. Anyhow, a bunch of really smart women and really knowledgeable women, especially about cycling. So you should sign up and subscribe to that and support that podcast. They talk a lot about pro women's cycling, like on the road, but then some of these other big prestige events like the Unbound race, which is the women's race, I believe, ended in, was it last year? It was ended in like a 8-person sprint.
I think so.
Yeah. So this is they say the World Series, or the big one of the big gravel races in the U.S. So we're excited to watch this. We have a few athletes doing it, both who have followed plans or that we actually coach ongoing. So I thought maybe to start, I'll try and summarize this a bit, but I sent sort of like last minute Unbound instructions. to the athletes that sort of followed plans or I've consulted with or that I'm coaching. And so there's 3 points. The first one is confidence in what you did and your plan. And this is especially important as you get to the race and you start seeing everyone with like carbon deep dish wheels and they're taking creatine and they're doing baking soda before the race. And some of them are whatever. Like, I guess there would have been like aero bars or fatter tires or skinnier tires or just whatever you did, just have confidence that it got you through all your training, all your adventures beforehand, and do it.
Now, says the guy who was totally going to screw with people at Sulphur Springs by bringing rollers and warming up on the bike.
Well, I think we are going to do that. But I do think that it makes sense. We're going to change ultra running, but also use all our cyclocross stuff we're going to invest in. What you can do is take notes. We talked about this with our pre-race sort of plan document, our pre-race routine document, where you can have a back burner. And one of those back burner things might be, oh, maybe I should use bigger tires. It seems like everyone has bigger tires. Or maybe this guy mentioned inserts, or this guy mentioned whatever. What is some weird kooky potions that someone might mention? I don't know, this carbohydrate gel or whatever. So those are things. Stick to your plan. Try and not change things last minute unless you like really have to, right? Like if your tires are rubbing on the frame already and then it's a muddy year, that would be an indication that like probably you might want to look at some narrower tires because it's very likely that you're going to have issues if they're already rubbing on the frame. So that would be something that you maybe would have to change, or like if there's an obvious, like your brakes are really rubbing, you might need to go get your bike looked at. But ideally, we stick to the plan.
And we looked at the weather, and obviously we're recording this early on Monday, so it could change, but it looks like, fingers crossed, this won't be a muddy year. Heat might be an issue. There's always a chance that there will be some mud on course because there is some rain in the forecast for the week.
And last week, I think like everywhere, the same rainstorm that sort of hit you. And I mean, it seemed like there was a similar rainstorm in the Giro in Italy. So I don't know how weather works. But yes, I would think you're going to find some mud. If not, there's river crossings. There's always like a river that's running really, really high, and how are we ever going to get through it? And then it seems to always work itself out. But that's the way I would just take it one step at a time. A lot of times we're chunking this race up. That brings us to our second point here is pacing. Don't start too hard. Don't start too fast. You want to be bored, especially before that first. I think there's 3. People are chunking it up into maybe 3 sections. There's sort of like, is it 2 aid stations? I always get confused how that works. But between the aid stations often is how people will chunk the race up. That first sort of 40 miles, whatever you want to do with it, the first quarter, the first third, just try and hold back a little bit. People always think about being in like a group ahead and going faster than their goal time. But the other way to think about it would be to be on your time, but in a group that's going to pull you along at an easy pace, right? So you're going at your goal pace, but you don't have to work as hard to do it. And that would be the dream situation, is that you're in a nice group. Now, it's hard to find that perfect pace, but if you do find that you're at your 20-minute power, your 20-minute feeling, your 5-minute, like you're maxing out, you're like well above your threshold heart rates. You're really breathing like this is like a short track or cyclocross race. You have to remember that this is a 200-mile race. You're going to be doing this still in 10 hours from now, almost irregardless of who you are, right? So like if 2 hours in you're blown and out of energy, you still have like a good day would be 10 more hours. So just be bored, be patient. There's lots of ground to make up. There'll be lots of wheels to follow and find later in the race. And that's what you need to do. And it's the biggest mistake people make.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very tempting, right? At the beginning, everyone's amped up. And I think, you know what, if you like, don't panic if you've gone out a little hot in the like very early part, right? Everyone's
we debate this. I mean, we just said you did your first lap faster than expected, but there was a feeling and like you were still moving. Like, I don't think that...
I literally would have told you I did it slower. Right, like 100% when I came in, I thought it was going to be like right around the 2 hours.
And I don't know with yours too, whether there was like a bit of like the temperature being cooler. Like I think it, like Absolutely. Rain aside, it was actually like really good for performance conditions, especially for those first couple. It was a titch warmer, mind you, still raining, but...
If it hadn't been wet, the temperature would not have been an issue.
That's right. Yeah. So pacing, try and figure it out. Now, a lot of people I've coached, we've worked on pacing things. We've done workouts that have challenged you, like, was this an appropriate pace? Like, did you use a heart rate to limit it? What is your threshold power? And so these are things that you can triangulate. I wouldn't use just one. Sometimes some of these fail. Heart rate monitors turn off, power meters never start. This happens. So at the end of the day, it is that feeling and like tying into breathing. Are you standing up a lot and smashing as hard as you can? Like, are you like really chugging along and doubting yourself? And that's where we want to be very confident and bored in those first couple hours. And it's just that eating contest is just, you don't want to get to 2 hours, be blown, and not have been on your eating plan. So don't start too fast.
And again, if you do, don't panic, just back off.
Right. And what I've said to people too is like, okay, like no one wants to get in a crash early and like everyone's excited and you just are where you are. So yes, you can afford 5 or 10 minutes at threshold or breathing hard. But if that becomes 20 minutes and 30 minutes and 40 minutes and 120 minutes, and then it's usually around 100 to 120 minutes, people will say, oh, I'm going to back off now. But what they're really like, no, you're really deep and you haven't been eating.
Yeah. Yeah, when I say like don't worry about it if you've done it, I do mean like 5 to 10 minutes max. I don't mean like 30.
And to your point, like yes, even at 120 minutes, if then you realize I did it, they told me not to do it and I did it, it's just settle down, take a bit of a break, like rolling break, but get the food in, take a deep breath, and then resume. And lots of people come back and you can still ride, like it's fine. But if we're talking about like getting the most enjoyable, smoothest day, that is the strategy. Pacing is an obvious thing. When you go too hard, too fast, it's painful the whole time, and it ends up getting slower and slower and slower.
I know I mentioned Born to Run a lot, the book by Chris McDougall, because I love it. And I do always remember, like, whenever I'm in a race, like, whenever I've been in an ultra and I start having, like, a bad moment, there's a moment in Born to Run where he's talking about Scott Jurek in Badlands. And it was his first time doing it. He ended up setting the course record, I believe. But, like, halfway through, he was, like, way off the record. He was, like, feeling like crap. He was, like, ready to drop out. And he thought about it, and it was, like, what would it take to win, to get the record or to win the race? And it was basically restarting the race, like mentally, just like starting from zero, like it's pretending that it's like lap zero, like you're at 0 miles and you still have to get to the finish line. And he was able to kind of do that mental reset. So I think, yes, if you find yourself in those situations in Unbound, the best thing you can do is kind of be like, okay, full reset. Mm-hmm. Yeah, take your drink, take your thing, forget what just happened, and start going again at the appropriate pacing.
Yeah, and I often will like chunk it up. I think that's what we're talking about with the aid stations, but sometimes when you're really hurting like that, like rather than thinking about the finish line, you sort of just say like, okay, I'm going to like focus on getting to that. Sometimes it's like that stop sign or that next road junction. And that happened to me at the first gravel race we did down south at Mid-South. I sort of did the 2 hours hot on purpose. Like I wanted to get in there and race. And then I took a little reset and got back into it and was moving fine. But it definitely was like, okay, 7K to the next corner. I can do 7K. Like, let's work to the next corner. Work. And just like self-talking to myself. And I'd get to the next corner and I'd say, okay, when's the next corner? Okay, 5K. I can do 5K. And then work. Get to the 5K. And then slowly, okay, the finish line. 5K. I can do 5K. And then away you go, right? And usually once you see the finish line or that you know you're going to finish, like it goes better. You start to get a little bit more energy. But there you go. So the third point, expectations. You do not deserve anything. And this is really like sort of what happened with your race, right? Like you do not deserve to win that race. You do not deserve to get the record. No one said that because you train consistently and hard and you put in all this work and all this money and we did all this preparation that like you deserve a nice day. You don't deserve anything. Like
look, we hope you have one. I hoped I would have one, but I think this is always such a good reminder about racing in general. And it comes back to like, even just the why we train, right? Like,
yeah, and it sounds harsh. I just sort of said it in a harsh way too. And it's supposed to catch you off guard a little bit, but it's also the reminding you that like the weather owes you nothing and these races are hard. Like that's why people do Unbound is like, it is hard and it is miserable and it's either way too hot or way too muddy or both. And like to finish that thing, kudos to you. And what I say to people is like to get to the line healthy, in good shape, on time with a functioning bike. That's always like that actually is the goal for a busy person. That is amazing that if you do even some of those things, it is amazing because bikes never seem to show up working, and it's always a rush to get there, and injuries are always around.
Well, I mean, you've had guys who've gone in with basically like the most perfect prep you could possibly, like best prep you could ask for, bike in good working order, ready with everything they need, and they get like 10 flats.
Mm-hmm. And they are people who like, and they've done everything, like every fix. I'm like, but did you try? And they're like, yep, I tried that. And did you have plugs? Yep, I had that. Did you have a spare tube? I had 6. Did you have a pump? Yeah, I had that and an inflator and like patches. And it's just like at some point, like they run out of patches. It's sort of like, you know, and then it just, these days happen, right? There'll be days like that. So to do that, to get to the line is great. And to have a good day, to have good weather is an amazing thing and a gift. And it is a lot of luck, right, as well. And what we want to remember is that a lot of the training should be fun. The process, the cliched process, should be a reward of the whole thing. Like most of the benefit of you doing Unbound is already done. It's already in the bank. It's already happened. So hopefully you enjoyed all that training to get there. And then if you do get the finish, or you get the goal time, or you get the whatever your goal was, that's amazing, and like what a cap to it. But that is not guaranteed every time you do these things.
No, it's totally the cliche, like who did you become on the way to the race, I think is the thing. And that's why I think I get a little cringy whenever I hear someone who just jumped into a marathon or into whatever and just kind of like did it. To me, I'm not that it doesn't count, but I'm like, what's the point of that? Like, big deal, you got through one race, but like, are you actually a better runner? Like, did you get healthier because of it? Did you?
So you're saying not so much like a I don't know, otherwise fit person jumps into a marathon, but you're saying like someone
like these
like
off the couch people
like,
that like,
yeah, like I'm training for a marathon in 3 months, maybe too quick of a progression. I get injured but I did the marathon, but then I'm never going to run again.
Not even the 3 months. Like I'm talking like your coworker challenged you to do on this weekend kind of thing. And this is a very like manosphere podcast kind of like bro
but
thing.
Like maybe the catch would be that like they're never going to run again. Like they didn't really build like, I guess we could say, healthy habits or community out of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. Or even like you say, like they didn't have like months or years of great runs with friends or something that built to that.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you did great if you got to the start line.
And then the last piece on this expectation is be ready for wet, mud, and or heat. This is somewhat specific to Unbound, but probably anything. And then this is something I borrowed from our friend Dan Marshall, who runs Substance, like really the gravel races in Ontario, Canada here. And he always says in the like sort of like race details, it always says like weather is guaranteed, like you're guaranteed weather. As far as like, you know, refund policies and stuff, it's just like weather is guaranteed. Sort of like satisfaction guaranteed. And I always like that because it sort of just sets the tone. Like you can't complain that, oh, Dan, there was like a bunch of mud on the course. And it's like, well, I mean, you're doing an off-road bicycle race. Like what did you expect? So weather is guaranteed. So we do the best we can. We prepare the best we can. We trial all this stuff. We have all the tricks and tactics. And we realize that at some point you're going to get beat by the weather.
100%.
Cool.
Okay. Do you want to hit the mailbag here before we wrap it up? So last week, we did a Things You Should Not Do on Race Day podcast, and we got some good feedback here.
So the quick one is our friend, I can just say his name, Tyler, who has a Cannondale association and loves e-bikes. He said that we forgot to mention e-bikes and pre-riding, which I was like, I guess that's fair.
As in like an e-bike could help you with the pre-ride because you can do it without expending as much effort?
I think that's what he was thinking. Maybe you see more of the course. Now, I said there's a lot of races now are actually like banning them. Like I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to do it at World Cups. He says that he thinks the Cannondale team, I'll just out them and maybe they'll get some Swiss franc fines. Maybe does do that. And so it would be neat if that was allowed, but it also would be not neat in some ways, right? Because then you end up with people flying around the course on e-bikes and all sorts of things could happen. And then it's also not fair to teams or riders who don't have an e-bike available. So I don't know. I'll leave that with people, but I guess that is an option. If you had an e-bike, we have a few athletes that we work with that have like an e-gravel bike and then an analog gravel bike. So I could see someone going out and just doing almost like a full gravel pre-ride, and it's often open road. So like good on you. And then you'd maybe see it. Now, the question would be like, do you really need to do that? Like a full gravel pre-ride? I'm not sure, but maybe it would let you get to those different sections. Like if I'm thinking about the Mid-South course, like I guess that would have let me like see a couple more sections versus seeing what I did see on my pre-ride. Like I did 2 hours and I did not see the full 100-mile course and missed a couple of the key sections, I guess, that I maybe would have wanted to see. So yeah, I guess that's an idea. I guess that's like an unofficial Cannondale plug. They could come on as sponsors too, I guess, if they wanted.
Whew. Can we say that?
No, not really.
No, we're a Trek family.
We're just goading Trek into coming on, and they do have the better battery technology, so we'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
And then we have this longer one here, and this was, I think, mostly just in agreement with our thing. Do you want to read this, or do we want to sort of summarize this? I think the key thing is thanks for the podcast. I get so much value out of it at 60 plus, and they're still racing. They went to a big marathon mountain bike race. And what they did this time, I guess this is sort of like the navigational stuff. They really thought about the course map beforehand and sort of like past limiters around fueling. So we had talked about, okay, it's important that you fuel. Can you use bottles? Can you put bottles in your mouth? And I think the gist of it is that they sort of said, I'm not great at getting bottles into my mouth during a mountain bike race. Technical sections abound. So they said, I'm going to use a pack for the base of my nutrition, but then I'll get some bottles that I'm going to fill ahead of a couple of the more long gravel sections. There was a couple big gravel road sections to try and get in a big bunch of water and mix at that point. And so they sort of were saying, okay, like by looking at the course map beforehand and planning out my fueling, then I was able to do better. So I guess that's mostly in agreement with this idea of what we were talking about, things not to do, like don't plan out your fuel or like
don't forget to like alert. I think it was very hard to do this. I was like, there's so many things to do, and then we're trying to do not do. So I think the big thing was make sure you understand what is on the course, what is available, where you're going to refill, how you're going to fill, how you're going to fuel, and have that planned out ahead of time.
And even that strategy of like, where are the aid stations? Like we were speaking in context of like a XCO mountain bike race because we had just done this local race here, our provincial race. And so we sort of had these aid stations and people like sort of not knowing which hand to take the feeds with, or could you get it in and like, how much are you taking out with you? I saw at the World Cup, there was a World Cup mountain bike race in the Czech
Republic.
Thank you. I want to say the Czech. I don't know if that's accurate. One of the best mountain bike races, World Cups. They're now calling it like it's. I think they've been there 16 times, and they're always just fantastic races. But they had added a feed zone that was up on top of like a hill. And so they sort of said, like, you want to take the bottle at the top of the hill. So there was a bit more weight coming down. And then a lot of the riders were either taking like no bottle or like a lighter, like a less filled bottle. Now at the World Cup, they're talking about like 100 grams or whatever. But these are the little things that you can plan out of like, when do I want all this water on board? When am I going to bring it on? Which aid stations am I going to stop at? And that would be similar with Unbound with this new additional stop that's at 40 miles. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, that's too short. I shouldn't stop. And I was like, well, it's nice to chunk up the race. Maybe that's a good time for the gut check, like, I guess literally and figuratively. But you also should just like maybe pull in, and maybe you could start light. So some people might start with bottles and then switch to their pack at the 40 mile. And that lets them be a little more agile in that early in the day when there is a bit more jostling and racing going on. That could be nice. But it's just another place where we, again, can play with some strategies depending on what your day's looking like.
100%. Okay, I think we should wrap up there. Keep the questions coming. We've got a couple good ones for next week. You can find us over at consummateathlete.com or at consummateathlete on Instagram. And again, thank you everyone who followed along with my racing adventures this weekend and messaged and all of that. It's always very, very meaningful.
Yeah, and everyone who came by, and we had a lot of people who did the 50K as well. So thanks and kudos to everyone who raced or who we chatted with over the course of the weekend.
Yes, anyone that listened, that got through, that was in the race and got through any laps, seriously, awesome job out there. It was ridiculous. All right, with that, happy training, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.